digital stuff is interesting because I was on it very early. When I was on faculty at South Dakota State, and I was the department webmaster for a long time,
Cool.
and I brought the web into my classes before anybody else did. And back in the late '90s, kids were just adamantly did not want to have to use computers because back then it meant they usually had to go to the library and use a computer. And by the time I retired, it was not, do I have the entire lecture, up
Yeah.
online in PowerPoint, and is there a video of old lectures, and where are the notes?
Yeah.
It was forget it. So it was something. By the time you're done, they not only that, they'd want to be able to Zoom chat you, at your office or whatever. So yeah, but so I've been retired for about 10 years, so I've stayed away from most of that stuff for a while. So
So what was your background then? What was your area of expertise or research?
well, I started out I got out of the Navy, and I got the bug about wanting to be a forest biologist. Everybody was kind of doing Nature Boy back then, and not to be sound derogatory about it because it's important. But so I went to got out of the Navy. I went to a small community college, found out I could actually do science and math, whereas
Yeah.
before everyone had said, "Oh no, you can't do that." Well, what? Guess what? And I really fell in love with being back in the forest because my dad had moved back to upstate New York from a career in the military, and I just dug it. And I went to forestry school at Syracuse, and with a degree in forest biology, and my specialty was in actually tree diseases and forest pathology, and I just loved it. It was,
Yeah.
and then we sat down and lecture one day when we first got there, and I said, "You guys, if you're not here eventually to get a PhD, then don't bother with this. Go get a job somewhere else." Okay, well, I'll go get the PhD, I guess. So I went up to Vermont, and I got really into doing genetics with the pathogens that cause diseases on forest trees. And I did a big study on populations and genes that control reproductive isolation and all that, and probably
Wow.
probably 5 people in the whole world have ever read my work. So but
That's
anyway, then I went on the academic trail, and I did postdocs at Nebraska and Berkeley, mostly in my field. And then I just snagged this job at South Dakota State, but I sort of changed where I was working in agriculture instead. So it was pathology, but on crops, like
okay.
corn and soybeans. Yeah. So I did that for years and years. I did research on the diseases, and I also did the teaching and all that business. And after 24, 25 years, I had enough and retired. So.
Well, I mean, it's funny because there's a lot of intersect that we have because I work with academics. My day job is working on a university campus with pathologists, but I mean more it's on the animal side, so it's
Sure, yeah,
wildlife.
yeah, yeah. Sure, yeah.
And like you said 5 people may have read your work. That's the life of an academic, though, right? I mean,
Yeah, it
that's just
sure is. Well, it's different. I've got 5 people who listen to my stuff on Spotify so far. So I'm
well,
I'm batting 1,000 there.
well, I'm one
So
of them. So
uh,
let's talk about then. So growing up, obviously before then, so you said your dad was military. What kind of music were you exposed to as a kid? Like, what was music like in your house growing up?
well, my dad was not very musically inclined. In fact, he was pretty dismissive of music, and some of that was political, and his stiff military bearing and all that. My mom, I found out liked music well enough, but she was never sang much. She actually played piano. But we were moving so much as kids in the military to different bases that music wasn't a big part of our life, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
early on. Although I've got pictures of me as a kid, in every house we go to, there's a piano. I'm banging on the piano. So you would think mom and dad would have said, "Hey, maybe let's see if he wants to do piano lessons." But that never happened. So anyway, we were in Germany and for 4 years. And this is when I'm about, coming up on 11 and 12. And my brothers had records, all the doo-wop stuff,
Yeah.
from the late 50s and everything. And the Beach Boy records. We were in about 1962, we were listening to the Beach Boys and all the doo-wop stuff. And and I started getting interested in music. I remember wanting a guitar, looking at the Sears catalog. You know, you're overseas, there's no way to do that, you know. And of course, the parents like, you don't want a guitar, you know, so that kind of thing. And so, you know, I really was digging the music. It was really getting to me. You know, Beach Boy stuff and all this other music. You know, just the just the fact that there were these recordings, you know, that they just were so beautiful. You know, the way the music would fill up spaces and have the cool little textures to them and everything. And then, you know, it's about 1963, and guess what? The Beatles dropped,
Beatles. Yeah.
and you know, I tell people it's like a quantum change. It was like an atom bomb going off. If
Yeah.
you weren't there, you have no idea what an atom bomb it was going off. And I still remember, you know, I was out with Boy Scouts or something. I'm out with my scoutmaster, and we stopped at the base exchange, and I got a hold of a copy of "I Want to Hold Your Hand" with I saw her standing there on the backside. It's probably that single's probably worth some money now. I don't know, but and I
You still
mean,
have it?
oh no, I don't have any of that
Okay.
stuff. I had something even more valuable probably. I had a 45 of them backing Tony Sheridan on my Bonnie and the Saints Go Marching In.
No way.
Yeah, last I saw that was listed about $1,000, but I don't know where that went. You know, I lost several collections along the way. But anyway, so no, that just blew up, and then at that point, and everything was about music from that point on for most people. And then we came back to the States, and you know, again, you get ripped away from where you are, and then it was, you know, you're dealing with being a teen in a young teen in a new school, and you're trying to keep up with all the James Bond spy stuff in the movies, and you know, puberty's hitting and all that. So, that was kind of languished for a while. But then I have to say, as far as influences, we're in Florida at MacDill Air Force Base, and I'm at the pool one afternoon, and I know the date has to be like August, sometime in August '75,
Okay.
and the Byrds' "Mr. Tambourine Man" comes on over the radio, and I hear that 12 string, and I haven't been the same since I heard that 12 string of McGuinn's, and from then on, man, I was a Byrds fanatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys, and you know, there's so much music to keep track of back then, and you know, you listen to what was on the radio, and you started getting a few albums. It wasn't like today where you know you can go online and listen to anybody you want.
Yeah.
And it's kind of blasé almost now. Back then, it was like people say, well, "Why didn't you listen to those guys back then?" I said, "Well, I didn't have the money to buy the records."
Exactly.
You know?
I
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
afford it.
Why weren't you listening to all the Grateful Dead albums? Well, couldn't buy them all, man. You know, it was like so. You know, and so then I started to build my little collection of records with the Byrds and some other people, and then we went to Okinawa, and there was a nascent music scene there, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Because Okinawa back then was basically one big military base, and there were lots of teen clubs and there were bands. You know, guys were starting to make bands.
Right.
And, couldn't get away with growing their hair very long, but they were playing that devil music and everything. And so, you know, I started hanging around with the guys that did that. And I'd start going to the band practices, and I started trying a little bit on drums and guitar and stuff. You know, I think I learned the chords to Gloria. You know
Okay.
that
Yeah.
song,
Yeah.
dan, 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 that Van Morrison song. And so then we got moved again down to Taiwan in Taipei. And again, that was a scene where you had all these diplomatic dependents and military dependents. And our parents were so busy doing their job that they didn't know what we were doing. And we just got away with murder, just living the life. And I bought a set of drums from a guy who lived behind our house in another house. His dad was a colonel in the airborne or something, I think, and his name was Jeff Newland. He just recently passed. I got to go out to California and see him a few weeks before he died. So I'm glad I did that. Anyway, I bought the drums from Jeff for about like 40, $50. Terrible set of drums. I mean, you couldn't keep them together. The hardware was terrible. But I was pounding away on them, you know, learning to keep a beat and everything. And I don't think I'd played in any bands yet. Maybe there were a couple times we sit around and try to jam and things like that. Everybody knew about three chords, you know.
Yeah.
you're lucky if a guy had an amplifier. There were no PAs, there was no mixers. You know, you put your mic, you put your vocals through a guitar amp, and there were these cheap knockoff Japanese, Chinese amps, you know, and sometimes they'd blow up and catch fire, and that sort of thing. And you'd have to find somebody's house you could have practice at. And but then that summer, I had to go to summer school because I'd flunked geometry with Mr. Dew, and our geometry teacher. This cannot be difficult. That was his famous thing. And my friend Dan Ferguson, who lives in New York, and he's actually a professor of ethnomusicology and a very talented musician.
Okay.
And we're going to go see Peter Gabriel at the end of September in Chicago together. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not jealous at all.
No, not at all. No. So, and so he and I were in this class sitting in the back. And we were doodling or something. So I like the birds, because I don't know, I was doodling out the logo or something.
Yeah.
So he is such a pack rat. He's still got the notes we exchanged back and forth about, hey, do you like this music? I like that music. Hey, you want to start a band? Wow. So next thing you know, Danny and I and a guy named Gary got on bass, and we started learning some songs and playing together. And it was pretty audacious because we were doing Cream and Hendrix. Nobody else was trying that stuff, and here we are doing that stuff, and we rocked it pretty good. I couldn't be Jim Baker, but I could keep a pretty good beat, and I could thunder here and there. And I remember we opened up the high school gym with Crossroads, and we just blew the crowd away. Yeah. And we did that for 3 or 4 months because we were. It was about 6 months later we all got shipped back to the States, but that was a great time. We still talk about that. People from back then are still talking to each other online and everything. So it's a lot of fun that a lot of them are still around and still talk to each other. And that's thanks to, the internet and all that stuff, so that's how we all found each other. And, so that was a good time. But then I came back to the States, and I got shipped to military school, and then in the Navy, and then I went on the academic trail. So the music kind of took a back seat, and I think my drums wandered off somewhere, and I had a guitar, and I taught myself to play some chords and finger pick and stuff like that. And it was always sort of on the side,
Yeah.
And it wasn't my highest priority, but I found out I was starting to write songs and stuff. So, and that just sort of kept bubbling under the surface and wouldn't go away for years and years. There were times where I didn't even own a guitar, like I was using my first wife's guitar for a while, and I never took lessons, and I didn't really practice the way a musician's supposed to. I'd probably, figure out the pentatonic scale myself, and and sit there doodling around with chords and stuff like that. And I'm still terrible that way as far as guitar playing. I never take lessons, and I just do what I can. But it kept there, and I do little things like playing with a church choir and writing a song for the new department head, that kind of thing. So play Christmas carols, and so we went through, and then as time went on, and I was getting more on my own after a second marriage, I went to a couple jams and things like that. And I felt pretty good about, my guitar playing was getting better, and I got over my thought that I couldn't sing,
Okay.
That was a huge leap, because all that time I was playing guitar, I'd heard my voice a couple times, and I wanted to, just crawl under the table. So, because that's how most people react to their voice at first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Until you get used to hearing it. And I think the big pivot for me was I started making myself learn complete songs.
Yeah.
I think the first song I learned all the way through was that Carole King song, "You've Got a Friend."
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That I really nailed down pretty well, and I still do that at shows. And then, I retired, and I don't know, I started going to open mics, and I found out I could sing pretty well, and I was playing okay, better than most people. And then I started opening for open mics.
Okay.
Next thing you know, I was hanging out my shingle to get hired, and now it's been 5 or 6 years I've been just playing gigs and recording my album and all that sort of stuff.
It's funny you say, when you say that too, because it's like I'm only a hobbyist, but I sing and I write and everything. And I think that first thing about when you realize if you go to an open mic or even, in the modern age, you go to karaoke or play
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
rock band or something, when you realize that, oh, actually, I'm as good as at least everyone in this
Yes,
room. So
yes.
maybe I'm not as bad as I built up
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
head for all
yeah.
those years, right?
You really have to do that. And I'll tell people now that I may not be the best guitarist in the world or best singer, but there are certain things about my voice listeners like,
Yeah.
uh, and they like the way I put on a show. So to me, it's all about putting on that show and then laying down the real music on the recordings,
Yeah.
and you get over that hump of thinking, well, I'm never going to be Eric Clapton. Well, yeah, right. I'm never going to be
Yeah.
Eric Clapton. So what? I don't need to be Eric Clapton. I
But
just have to be able to play what I need to play.
and there are those
So
guys where Clapton thought, well, I'm never going to be Buddy Guy or I'm never going to
yeah,
be
yeah,
Robert
yeah,
Johnson.
yeah,
Everyone's got
yeah.
him, right? So
Right, exactly. And so you just get over that. And what I found out was I can write pretty good songs, I think, and my voice has its own, you know, quality in there with the James Taylors and Gordon Lightfoot type baritones,
yeah,
and that's okay, man. So that's all right. And
it's
so I'm just enjoying it now. Right now I just keep working on polishing my songs, and so when I do play, they're really good, and coming up with new material,
yeah.
uh and especially now with the technology, I've got this looper that I can do backing tracks on, so I can walk in and I'll walk into a place and they don't know what they're going to hear, and I've got the looper all dialed up, and I
Yeah.
I I open up with "You Don't Know How It Feels." Then I hit them with "I Won't Back Down," and then I kill them with "You Wreck Me." Sometimes with a 12, sometimes with electric, with a
Yeah.
harp and everything, and loud with drums and everything, and that's a pretty nice intro to do that. So
So you're definitely one of those people who I would say has music in your bones. And that's that thing of
absolutely,
it's like you said, I think one of the things when you do teach yourself to play and to sing and to compose and those kind of things, rather than, any sort of prescriptive lessons, it gives your voice a very unique angle, right? So you don't sound like anyone else, really. I mean, I
yeah,
hear I hear shades of other people in your playing, like John Prine, I
yeah,
hear a lot in that picking style, but it's not
yep,
exactly the same. It's definitely
right.
you, right? So, and I think that
Yeah,
that's important in
I would
artists.
absolutely say that I don't fit into any genre other than, broadly singer songwriter,
Yeah.
and my stuff is pretty diverse. I'll have a thing that sounds like a real gutsy blues here and there, and then I'm doing delicate, like Baroque sounding things. So then I'll have something that sounds like at some blues club in Chicago at 3 in the morning somewhere, so you just can't tell. So, and yeah, I think I'm happy with not necessarily sounding like all these red dirt guys that are out there.
Yeah.
I'm not slamming red dirt because it's just really great music, but that ain't me.
Yeah.
So
And it
I'm not a
shouldn't. It
cow.
shouldn't be.
Yeah, I'm not a cowboy. And I'm,
Yeah.
I may put on a drawl for a song, but I'm not from Texas, and I look kind of dumb in a cowboy hat. Whatever stuff.
Not many people
So,
look good in a cowboy hat. Just
yeah,
don't tell them that.
yeah. You gotta have the right look to look good in a cowboy hat. So.
When you're talking about diversity in your music too, and that's something I was going to touch on because the last single that you put out, it was the summertime. That's
Yeah.
almost got that kind of Bill Withers thing where it's a lot of suspended chords. It's this almost
Yeah.
Afro Latin beat to it. It's got a
Yeah, yeah,
completely
yeah.
different vibe to anything that was on your first album. So where did that song
Yes.
come from?
It's kind of interesting. I was looking at TikTok videos or something, and this guy saying, "Well, these are 5 jazz chords in a progression that you have to know." I'm looking at him and I'm like, "Well, yeah, but it doesn't sound like much. But I like that chord, and I like that chord,
Yeah.
and I like that chord." So I don't even know what the chord is. It's like a D minor ninth. And then there's a G sixth or something, and it resolves to a C major seventh for the verse part of that thing, and that just repeats. That's a tendency I have in some songs to repeat that chord progression, build up some tension, and then release it with a
Yeah.
with a thing. And so again, my process I love that bit in the Beatles movie where Ed Sheeran's making fun of himself, talking about process.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
your process? He's making fun of the whole idea. And so my process is I sit in the kitchen, drink coffee, and I wing around with chords, and sooner or later something pops in. A chord progression pops in, a snatch of melody pops in, and words pop in. Just like that.
Yeah.
That's like John Prine says that the song truck pulled up in front of the house and dumped something, So
Yeah.
I can, and I've learned now when that happens, I have to just shut down everything else and focus on that,
Yeah.
and I've got like 12,000 videos of my little bits on my phone, a library of little bits that I can go back and look at. So
Yeah.
anyway, um, now at the same time, I don't know how the first words came to that, but I know a couple that were here in Brookings. He worked down at the brewery, this guy, and
Okay.
his girlfriend worked at the brewery too. Okay. Lovely young couple. And I watched them fall in love, start dating,
Oh, that's amazing.
get married, and they moved to the cities. He's still working as a brewer. I don't know what she's doing. I think she's a stay-at-home mom, and she's got two of the loveliest little kids. And that story just came out. I mean, I don't know how it did it. So I was just sitting there and I said, well, she took a little flat in the city and the
Yeah.
rest just kind of flowed out, and that was it.
What I love about it too, though, is there's a very clever little trick that I don't know if this was deliberate or that this just came out, where you don't realize until that last verse that you're actually being told this from a third person perspective. So it's not sort of, then you bring in the storyteller in the third verse, and you say that I've watched them. So I thought that was a really nice little trick that you kind of pulled there.
It's in the third verse where I say something like, I can't tell you how the evening ended,
Yeah.
because normally you would say, oh, they had this passionate evening, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're describing it, well, they met each other and then they went out and they did whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I'm this guy who's seen this girl move in across, an apartment across
Yeah.
the street downtown. I've got this little shop. And this is totally made up. This is all just imaginary. And I said, well, I can't tell you what happened that night, because I had to go home. So yeah, it was a fun thing to do. And James did such a good job on adding the percussion and all that stuff. Because the way things work with James, I'm producer James Steffen, is we'll record the basic guitar tracks and my vocals.
Yeah.
And then he'll program in the percussion, and I'll usually play bass.
Okay.
All the stuff you've heard that I've recorded, like She's Moving On, where we've got a band kind of sound, I'm doing all the guitars and bass. And sometimes he slips in things without telling me, like this last one I just sent you.
Yeah.
Said, well, I don't think we'll do bass on that because it'll sound like a Waylon Jennings song if we put in that thumping country bass. Said, that's okay. I put some stuff in there to give it a little bit more bass. I'm still have to ask him, what'd you put in there? And so yeah, it works out pretty well like that. I'm really happy with like She's Moving On, because we went in there and we did the basic rhythm guitar, did the vocals, I put in the bass, and then I said, I'll just wail on harmonica on one track, and we did that, and then I wailed on lead guitar all through the song.
Yeah.
And then as James is mixing it, he picks out the bits which would fit in, so he brings them up and everything. So we've got this kind of contrapuntal, New Orleans style counterpoint going on all through the song with the harmonica and the guitar. So that's sort of like almost like our process to how we get to do things.
Okay. And so how did that relationship start with him then? Because with your first album, Fade to Memory, which I have, folks, you should go out and buy that. Go to Tommy's website.
Right here.
There you
go.
Yeah. That's obviously mainly just you and an acoustic guitar.
Right.
But then really that's going to be the arrangements as you play them live, as you wrote them. But when you start working with a producer, then you're going to get that, the outside consciousness is going to say, okay, well, actually, I bet if you do this, or maybe you don't need that. What was that process like?
Well, I met James through another guy. We were doing an evening session thing out in a small town every Wednesday, and the guy who runs that owns a bar named Carl Williams. So you got to meet this guy named James, and I met him because he was looking to produce people and record people and that sort of thing. And in the daytime, he's a banker, but at night, he's a record producer, a mogul. He wants to be a mogul. Great guy. And so we sat down and we recorded these all acoustic. The first album was just me playing live and singing live. There's no overdubs on there, except I think on Phoenix we came back and put on some overdubs, some lead guitar. So all the magic on there is him doing the EQ and some compression and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really proud of that album, because I'm sitting there going like, I can't believe I played and sang all this stuff and didn't, And so what happened was we realized that maybe we needed to up the ante a little bit when we continue into the future, and have more of a band thing to,
Yeah.
obviously you want your stuff to get to wider audience and such. So we went back to She's Moving On and re-recorded that the way I was explaining to you. And that's, I think it's a pretty good song. The last gig, a young lady came up. What was the title of that song? She went right to Spotify to look it up,
Yeah.
so I felt good about that. And so we did that. And with the younger one, of course, it was the summertime. We that right from scratch, we knew we were going to record it like that. And so now I almost want to go back and do Fade to Memory Reimagined, because I've got all this, that's pretty perfunctory, the guitar playing, and I've got like on Radio On, I want to make that into a band song.
Yeah.
And we've been doing Sailing Down the Wind with a looper. It's a real kind of free floating jazzy sounding thing.
Yeah.
And I've got new riffs for This House Without You. So there's a bunch on there we could reimagine almost with that kind of stuff.
So is that when you write, then do you sort of can you hear the full band arrangement as you're playing it on acoustic, or does
it develops after a while? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes the full band arrangement comes based on the acoustic version. If you go back and listen to guys in there, one of the things I love to do is go back and listen to early demos of songs that ended up being bands. And usually a guy writing it sometimes has all the riffs there that he's finger picking or doing whatever on the guitar that end up as being the horn section or whatever. It's just they give that part over to the horn section or whatever. And so this last one I just did that. I think you listened to it already. Have you listened to it?
Yes. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay. So when I do that solo, I do all those finger picking parts, and even that lead part in the middle, I've got that comes from the finger picking part.
Okay.
But we just decided to go with a lead on that for that part. So, it's all, usually at some point I'm thinking, what would this sound like with a band,
Okay.
And I need a lead guitar player here. And like on a lot of my stuff, I'm imagining things like accordions and, hey, yeah, an accordion in there. And, when we do Sailing Down the Wind, I've got a clarinet player who plays with me when I play live. If you, I don't know if you saw that clip where we played at the Levitt.
I don't know if I did.
Falls. Yeah, it's on my website.
Okay.
It's right up front there. Yeah. And so the Levitt is a series of music that's presented in some cities by a foundation.
Okay.
And they decided to have an open mic about a month and a half ago to open up before the main guys. And so my friend Dan and I, we got down there for the first open mic, and we were the first guys to play. And so we did Sailing Down the Wind, but he does some real nice clarinet work through that song. It really adds to it. So I'm honking on the harmonica, the main theme, and then he comes in with the clarinet, and we're just kind of floating around with that thing, real jazz kind of. So yeah, all that kind of stuff is always working through my mind on a solo song. It's very rare that I'm not imagining something else that could be in a song,
And the new song, to tell people, and I mean, by the time this comes out, I'm not too sure what the release date is for that, but the new single is called Drive. And I really connected with that one too, because when I met my wife, I was still in the military. And so the first, I don't know, 9 months of our relationship or 2 years even, were spent long distance. And so that the idea that, I don't like seeing driving away, it's a hard thing, right? And there's a couple of spots in it too that I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Eric Bibb.
No.
Brilliant. I think you'd enjoy him. There's a few vocal lines that I'm like, oh, that really sounds like Eric Bibb covering Bob Dylan's Buckets of Rain. It was a great cover. So there's a couple of lines I'm like, when you just hear little inflections of other people.
Yeah. By the way, that song, the original acoustic demo is on the website. If you go to the videos on the website, you can hear the original. But I hadn't come up with the finger picking intro for that yet. So, and that was arrangement. I had that a long time ago, and I really put in a lot of work into every bar of that to try to come up with the fills and the finger picking that would be cool. And it's still places I could still be adding stuff. But that's the great thing about playing your stuff live is you can do what you want when you play live. So
songs grow. Yeah.
I mean, that's a Bob Dylan thing. He never let a song rest. They may be his children, but he's whacking them upside the head all the time, you
Yeah.
know.
To the
So
to
yeah,
the frustration of his fans sometimes. You just
yeah, yeah,
where's this
yeah,
new verse come from?
yeah, yeah. And how many people go to a? How many people do you know they go to a show and like if you go to a Doobie Brothers show, the people are all happy just to see them playing everything note for note, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm like, really? I go to some of these modern concerts where the old bands are playing their stuff perfectly, and I'm like bored.
Yeah, I
Oh,
want to. I go to
yeah,
a show to
yeah,
hear. I want a performance. Exactly. I'm totally
yeah,
on
yeah,
board with
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it, you know, and it's brilliant, you know, that they can do that. But last thing I'd want to do is just play everything exactly, you know,
Yeah.
every time. So
I should say too, though,
yeah, so
we're talking to you about arrangements. There is one song on Fade to Memory that I don't think you, if you do go back and redo any of these things, I wouldn't want you to touch Empty Chair because I think it's my favorite song on the album, and it's just so beautiful in that stripped back arrangement with just the acoustic guitar that I think if you
yeah,
added
yeah,
anything
no,
to it,
that's one
it
I
would
no,
detract.
that's one I wouldn't touch.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's funny. My friend Danny heard that when I first put out a little demo of it. He said, well, you've actually matured as a songwriter now. And
yeah,
I said, okay, I'll take that. But you know, that was me just trying to be Nick Lowe. Not Nick Lowe, but who's the guy? Nick Drake. That's me like trying to be a Nick Drake.
really,
Oh yeah, that's I went through. Was going through a listening to Nick Drake phase, and that might have come through about then.
because
But
it's all prime to me because he's got that that octave
yeah, oh
boom
yeah, yeah,
boom boom, the
yep,
finger
yep,
picking
yep,
style, and then I get Fort Worth Blues by Steve Earle. It's got the same
yeah,
heart
yeah,
wrenching
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
quality
That's
to it.
it. Just came out, and you know, it's just about a guy who's basically given up on love. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's not going to take the chance anymore. So yeah, no, and you know, that's funny. That's one I don't really do live very often because
Okay.
usually I'm usually in a bar with people screaming. But um, that's the one I think that's got the second most hits on Spotify.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a great song, man. I mean,
I don't know
again,
if that's because of when it was released, but yeah, no, I really like what I did with that song with the descending minor thing
yeah.
and all that stuff. Yeah, I don't, it doesn't really have a bridge or anything. I don't think, if I remember right, but I like that song. I think it's a departure a bit, but I really like that. So
So when did you start? When did you hear Tom Petty first? Do you remember sort of when Tom Petty pervaded your sort of, got into your brain and so you started listening to Tom's music?
okay, so here's the problem with me musically and my dearth of listening to so many people is that back in the 70s, early 70s, when I was in the Navy, I was my brain was kidnapped by Yes. You
And they
probably
never
know
gave it
whereof,
back.
yeah, you know whereof I speak for years. So anything that wasn't prog rock back then, I was probably turning up my nose at. You know,
Yeah.
while all the Red Dirt stuff was coming along ever since the band and Dylan went back there, right? I'm listening to Yes, I'm listening to Genesis, whatever, you know, Gentle Giant, all those guys,
Yeah.
and their clever arrangements and you know key changes, tempo shifts, and just rocking out, you know. And I went to see Yes 2 or 3 times, and it was like so I'm going into the 80s. I just listen to my old Yes albums or whatever the else I got around. And I'm not
Yeah.
really listening to that many people. I'm busy on my dissertation and all that stuff. So somewhere in there, probably I heard some Tom Petty on the radio or something. If I was listening to AM, but I was probably just putting him in the neo punk category or something, not listening that hard, you
Yeah.
know. And when I got to South Dakota and I started playing more music, I was slipping back into, you know, a more of a traditional music kind of thing, you know, on my because of my playing and everything, you know.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be Steve Howe, obviously, you
Yeah.
know, so who is, but and so then I can't remember if I got the greatest hits album first, but uh somehow I must have got a hold of Wildflowers and it just totally wrecked me
Yeah.
for so many reasons. And I'm just still so enamored of that album in every bit of it, every song, every note.
Yeah.
And did you know that won engineering Grammy for that year?
I didn't know that. Actually, no.
Yeah, yeah. And part of the reason it got to me was it was the best sounding recording I'd heard in so long.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was because it was flatter, they kept reverb out or what. I said, but all the drums and the bass and everything were so clean, you know?
It sounds like a band playing music.
Yes,
It's
yes.
incredible.
And I just, I'm still, people know me for like all these guys named the Haig brothers down in Sioux Falls. Two guys play piano, really got a nice band and all that kind of stuff. And I said, "Well, I ought to sit in and do because they do Wildflowers, but it's on pianos and stuff."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I ought to sit in and do that with you." So I said, "Oh, you just want to sit in and play the whole album with us? Is what you want to do?" And I said, "Yeah, I could do that probably. I've worked out every song on the album at
Yeah.
least to go through it." And the funniest story about Wildflowers, though, is I was back home in upstate New York. My mom and dad are living up there, retired. And I'm taking my mom somewhere in the car, my beat up old Lumina or whatever. And I've
Yeah.
got Wildflowers on cassette. And mom, they're big band era, if it doesn't
Yeah.
have, all those chord changes and melodies like that, it just sounds like garbage to them. And I said, "Well, you mind if I put this on?" "Yeah, go ahead," she said. At first, I was surprised. She said, "Yeah, go play some of your music in the car." So we got like 3 or 4 songs into Wildflowers, and I'm turning the corner or something. She says, "Oh, I really like that," and I almost wrecked the car, because what, mom likes Wildflowers? What the hell? The world has changed. And so yeah, that's funny as hell. Yeah, and then so that's I had to learn every song on there I could. So
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people will play Tom Petty, but when you go to see cover bands and stuff, they're going to play Mary Jane's Last Dance,
Yeah.
and I don't know what else. But I'll go into a show and I'm playing Time to Move On. What is it? Hard to find a
To find
friend.
a
I
friend.
do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I do that. Like I said, I'll open up with "You Don't Know How It Feels," and then I do, of course, um, "I Won't Back Down." That's from the other album,
Yeah.
and then "You Wreck Me," and I just love "You Wreck Me," just the simplicity of it and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'll play harp parts through there too. If I don't want to play lead guitar, I'll cross harp over "You Wreck Me" and
Yeah.
stuff. And I'll play Wildflowers. I probably played Hard on Me, and if I get a crowd that needs it, I'll get the Telecaster out and I'll put on both overdrives, and I'll get a thumping drum beat, and I'll do Honeybee.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll wail on harp on Honeybee, and I think I've got "Crawling Back to You" on the looper to do if I want sometimes. But every song through there I've worked through, and I probably listened to this album 4 zillion times.
Yeah, man. It
Yeah.
was the same thing. Like because I kind of went backwards with Petty, obviously, because I discovered him really, obviously.
Yeah,
Full Moon
I
Fever was
discovered
huge.
him late. I
Yeah, me too.
discovered him late. If I
Yeah.
wasn't getting into the early '90s, I was dismissive of him.
Yeah.
All through the '80s, it was 3-minute rockers. And he was so ugly you could hardly look at him at that time. And it was these guys all trying to look like a hair band or something. I don't know, like, what the hell is this? But anyway, I just fell in love with him after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I became a Petty freak. So,
And as I think, I think part of it too is when you're a songwriter, when you are a musician, you write songs, you understand how good he was at that. Just how almost effortless it was, right?
You're gonna ask me 3 words to describe Tom Petty later, right?
Yeah.
So, absolutely brilliant songwriter.
Yeah.
That's so
the craft behind those songs, because I'm reviewing the songs from Full Moon Fever, and like you said, you can it's easy to dismiss that album as Tom's big shiny pop record, but the craft in behind the songs, the songwriting is still, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
He does so much with so little, that guy. Like he doesn't need all the bells and whistles. He doesn't need your Andersons. He doesn't need your Eddie Howard.
He doesn't need all those sissy chords that I use. Did you hear about talk about that? Yeah, that song had sissy chords, and he's talking about major sevenths and things like that. And I'm like, well, I don't know, Tom. I like a lot of those sissy chords. So.
Who's the I can't think of the Dower guy who said, one chord's great, 2 chords is fine. Anything more than that, you're into jazz.
Yeah. I kind of said that. Yeah, it's like, who was it? Mark Chestnut or somebody like that got in trouble for playing with an orchestra or whatever. All the things went crazy because they started adding arrangements to the songs and whatnot. I mean, Garth Brooks has he has a G diminished in a song, and that freaked out everybody in Nashville, right? That song Friends in Low Places. You know, it goes into a couple diminished courses, a couple play, and those guys in Nashville were like, "What?" You know. So,
Well,
and then I go to see these. I go to see these guys. You know, in the cowboy hats. Bless their hearts, they got great voices and everything, but they're playing G, C, D all night long. You know, and they get good melodies, but underneath there's not a lot there. They do a lot melodically and thematically with very little chords underneath.
They all sound the same. I mean,
There's
it's so homogenized that the country, Nashville really ruined popular music in a way, because they did sort of go, well, let's get this fixed sound and pump as much of it out as we can.
Well,
and pop music took it on, right? So
that's how it is when you get up that level. They're trying to make money. They're trying to make stuff that's going to sell. So they've got formulas. Nowadays, you get a girl singer who can crank out at least a vocal that you can then auto tune, and you got the producers patching in drums and everything. Maybe they got a studio guy and they get some beat happy thing that's sort of hip hoppy funky. And I see all the girls downtown singing those in the bars when they're getting drunk. You know, when they come down Friday night. Those kind of songs that got that. You know, they bring that into the country too. You know, what I want to say, and I don't want to sound like I know what I'm talking about, because I'm just a hick out sticks, you know, playing music in little bars and stuff. But it really seems like music is producer driven rather than artist driven. You know, and it's driven to make the hit. And what I tell people is I don't have to worry about that, because, you know, I got a retirement and Social Security. I'm secure financially, and I'm going to play whatever I want. You know, so I'm not trying to write country, because that's not my genre. I'm not trying to please everybody. So I write what I want. That's just why you said there's a lot of diversity in the kind of things I write. You know? But that's just how that big music industry looks to me. You know,
for sure.
And I don't think I'd really want to be part of that. I'm 72. I don't know that I want to go have somebody try to groom me to be a star or anything like that. You know, it's like I just want to be like old Don Williams, you know, and just show up and play a gig, and you know, everybody leaves me alone.
But that's the right reason to do it, right? I mean, the reason to do music is because you feel it and you want to get it out.
I got up there at that Montrose Festival, you know, which is a great little festival for everybody. And you know, I have to warn empaths when I start playing some of my stuff. You know, so I played a song for you, and I had a woman bawling right there in front of me when I played it. So you know, you play music for various reasons, but I'm doing it to play the music and enjoy doing it. So.
And it's the human connection side, right? And that's that piece where now it's not just a monologue. Now it's a conversation between you and the audience, and you're getting feedback from the audience. Of course, that's why you want to do it. And Tom said, you know, he wrote in a song like I would have done it for free, and that wasn't him being glib. Of course, musicians want to get paid and should get paid and don't get paid enough. But at the end of the day, if you weren't getting paid, you'd still be doing it. It's just in your blood.
And I like being able to make that. I like it when somebody comes up. I did a show recently. I did the song contest thing down in at a winery down south of Sioux Falls, and the prize was to get to open for a music festival. I didn't win it. There was another group that was pretty good after me. That was a group that was going to be the obvious choice, but guy came up and talked to me afterwards to say he liked the music. He said, you know, my wife said, I just feel so comfortable with this music.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll get that now and then, or people come up and say, I so connect with that lyric you wrote there and that sort of thing. And that's, you know, I will not be shy about saying that's very gratifying to hear that, to connect with
of course.
Yeah.
Well, and especially when, you know, like you said, it's different if you're in a band. And it's different if you're like you said, because I'm a drummer, I'm a little hobbyist drummer, and you sit at the back and that's fine. Like, it's great because no one's bothering, no one's really looking at you. They're all looking at the singer. So as a singer, you need a voice. And that's I'm not just talking about being able to sing the right notes, but having character and being able to emote properly. And that's one thing. And I will say this to you, that I absolutely love your voice. It's the same with Steve Earle, John Prine, you know, Jackson Browne, all those guys. The songs are great, but the voice is what really tips it over the edge for me. And I think you've got that same quality to your baritone and the way you deliver the songs. I think it really, really
I've
works.
gotten that back. And here was the big surprise. Once after I got over hating my own voice or whatever, I found out, and you could have never convinced me that if I kept practicing singing, that my voice might get better.
Yeah. It's funny here because you said like, isn't that strange that when you practice singing, it gets better? It's almost as if it's an instrument that you need to learn how to play.
No kidding. Yeah. And that was the part I thought, like all singers, they just have the gift and that's it. But
Yeah.
guess what? You know, Tom Jones is in there, one of my favorite singers of all time. I'm sure that with that voice of his that he does the exercises to keep that
Of
instrument
course he
up.
does.
Yeah,
Of course he
so
does. Yeah.
even Mick Jagger has a vocal coach, and that's the
Yep.
sorriest singer I've ever known. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, and it works for me. I do. People say, "Well, why don't you do this music or that?" I said, "Well, the stuff I cover is Gordon Lightfoot, James Taylor, all those great baritones. I do that kind of stuff. John Prine. I have a great time with John Prine's songs all the time.
So
Yeah.
much fun.
So,
He's another guy who I discovered really, really late because just wasn't big in England. I don't think a single one of his songs was known in England. So when I found this unbelievable songwriter with this great
yeah,
voice,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, wow. And just again, the way that he would mess around with lyrics, he's such a great lyricist.
Well, I probably had heard of John Prine because I knew these guys were country fans or whatever. But sometimes my musical knowledge or catalog in my head is from what I happen to accidentally pick up CDs and whatnot. Somewhere along the line, thank God for libraries that have CD collections.
Yeah.
That's how I found Richard Thompson and John Prine. And most of the John Prine I do comes off the Missing Years, right?
Yeah.
Because I got that out of the library and I'm like, holy gumdrops, I like this album. And Howie Epstein produced that.
He sure
Actually.
did.
Yeah, yeah.
Tom plays
And
on and sings on one of those
yeah,
on tracks
yeah,
on the
he's
album too.
on, he's on harmony in one of those tracks,
Yeah.
singing on those. Yeah, they recorded in a in a hallway in some house in Topanga Canyon or something. I
Yeah.
don't know, but that's one of those albums that that and Rumor Inside by Richard Thompson. They're ones that I must have got out of the library first and just
Yeah.
fell in love with. And so yeah, so
It's great. Like, and again, getting into Petty for me was a big deal because again, like I knew I Won't Back Down, I knew Free Fall, and I knew all the sort of the big radio hits.
yeah, yeah,
And then I heard when I moved to Canada, then I heard Refugee a little bit more. And so it's like, okay, well,
sure.
obviously this guy's more than this. So then when you start going back and you think it's album after album after album, just like
He was
everything's
music for the
quality.
people, man. He was
Yeah.
music for straight ahead rockers. It's just straight ahead rock music, and it's good writing. He's always got good hooks.
Yeah.
I'm a lot of people are disdainful about hooks, but man,
Awesome. So
yeah.
where can people find you then, Tommy? Tell people where they should look for you. And I would urge, like my listeners, please do go check out Tommy's music. I know that you'll like it because it's right
Okay,
in the
now
wheelhouse topic. So where do we find you?
if you wanted a CD version of this, okay, and I know nobody buys CDs much anymore. If you go to my website, well, did that work out for you?
Yeah, sure
It must
did.
have worked out because you listened to. You can order the CD online at my website, which is www.tommyedwinmusic.com. Okay, and that's got all my usual stuff on there, schedule and all that. And you can also download the tracks to your computer for like $1 each. If you want to have them on the computer. And then I'm on Spotify and iTunes and YouTube and all those places, streaming. So, and everything from Fade to Memory is on there except for Radio On, because we have a plan for Radio On because of the subject matter and what's coming up.
Okay.
And also, I think I wanna do a thing to it. It's kind of a Dylan-esque song, Radio On.
Okay.
And I think I wanna get the drums and bass and guitar on there, so it has that feel of the '60s, like maybe like Visions of Johanna kind of feel to it.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing, and also that because that would set the mood for the time era of the song.
Yeah.
And then and I get to do some little vocal for me, what are vocal gymnastics on there. So and that's James' favorite song on the album. So
Okay.
we're still gonna do something with that. But everything else from the first album is on there. And of course we put a band version of She's Moving On there as the track
Yeah.
on Spotify. So and yeah, that's where it's at. And if that's my website and that stuff on Spotify, the download and all that kind of stuff. stuff.
What about social media? Where can people find you on Facebook,
Oh,
Twitter,
I'm
Instagram?
Facebook, Twitter. I'm not as good on Instagram as I should be.
Me
And
neither.
people are telling me I really should. A woman the other night said, put this new song on Instagram because that's what's going to get your
Right.
listeners. And I said, okay, maybe we'll try that. But yeah, I'm always on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. I think I'm signed on to a couple of newer sites, when Twitter started imploding. So, but I don't do much on those. I'm still hanging out on Twitter, making inappropriate tweets. It's not strictly a business account. I'm probably telling you how my Wordle game went and what I had for dinner, and probably commenting on Trump or various other guys.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at, and we're almost close to 5,000 streams on Spotify.
Nice.
That's about $20. I can, who knows? I can
get some coffee.
McDonald's dinner. Yeah. So I'm just happy to have people listening to the music. So
of course. Well, and I'm really, really happy that we got to connect because I've been listening to your music now. We sort of came across it, bumped into each other online on Twitter.
Yes.
Had a couple of little conversations back and forth. I bought the CD, really enjoyed the music, and again,
I'm glad you do.
Not that far away, so at some point maybe I'll just even drive down to South Dakota sometimes.
Thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed myself tremendously.
Good, yeah, and we'll do it again sometime.
Appreciate what you bet. Anytime. You bet.